Okay, so we've removed our mesial side and we've removed our distal side here. One of the things that we want to double check also is to make sure that we have our dimensions correct. So if I look at what the mesial distal diameter of the crown is, it's 8.5. So I'm going to take my Bowley gauge and I'm going to place it on the mesial distal diameter here, measuring the mesial side and the distal side. And I want to make sure that I have it exact, which should be at 8.5, which it's at 8.5. The next thing I need to do is I need to actually take a look at my mesial distal diameter at the CEJ. So I need to actually bring these sides in just a little bit here. Right now, my measurement I'm going to use with the curved side of the Bowley gauge is we use the curved jaws on the concavities, which our CEJ would be concave in. So I'm going to take at the height right up here where the top of this line is, and as I measure that, my reading is just at 8, but it needs to be 7. So that means that I need to actually remove a little bit from this side here and a little bit from this side here until I can get it to 7. So I'm going to turn it on its side, and just in that area I'm going to carve a little bit to create that indentation. You see as it's curved in here a little bit, and the same thing on this side here. Create a little bit of a indentation. A little bit more. Okay, so now I'm going to take and I'm going to double check. Sometimes it takes a couple of different times to be able to make this measurement here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure, instead of at the top of this line, I want to measure the CEJ at where this point would be on the distal curve and the mesial curve. So from the mesial curve here to the distal curve, I'm now going to measure, and that's right at just above 7, so I just need to take a couple more strokes on this distal here. So now, when I measure from this mesial curve to the distal curve right here, it's exactly at 7. Okay. Now, the next thing we can do is we can remove this 1 millimeter at the incisal edge. That's just a little bit of a safety buffer, safety mechanism here. So let's go ahead and just take that down a little bit. Let's double check. I'll measure right here at the cervical incisal length of the crown, which is at about 9. That means I can bring it down just a little bit more. Top of the CEJ to the incisal edge, and the reading should actually be 10.5, and that's right about where it is right now, 10.5. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to go on to stage 2. This is stage 1. Stage 2 is when we turn the carving on its mesial side here. And again, what we're going to want to do is measure our wax. It's at 15. So I'm going to say 7.5 would be the middle. I'll lock this in place. This is my labial view. I turn it on the mesial view, and I'm going to draw a line straight up the middle, just like I did before. Now, just like we had done before, a little bit deeper so you can actually see it. Now we're going to draw the mesial aspect, and because we removed this 1 millimeter here, we don't need to add a 1 millimeter onto the bottom. But one of the easiest things we can do is we can note that if this dimension right here is 10.5, and this is the top of the CEJ here, all we need to do is follow this line across and score it across right at that 10.5, so we don't have to measure it. As long as it's this line here matches where the top of the CEJ is over here, we actually don't need to measure it with our Bowley gauge. Now, what we do need to do is work on our other dimensions, which are the labial-lingual diameter at the CEJ and the labial-lingual diameter, which will end up being in the cervical third. So our labial-lingual diameter is 7.0. So I'm going to actually divide that in half. Come up with a 3.5, slide it over until it matches. And on this CEJ line, I'm going to place inside of the Bowley gauge on the center line, and I'm going to take my Hollenbeck carver and I'm going to create a little mark over here on this side, move it over, and put another line on this side. This is your CEJ dimensions here, which is 3 millimeters on this side and 3 millimeters on this side. Then for the labial-lingual diameter, we know that this is going to be, the height of contour is going to be in the cervical third. So I'm actually going to move this 1, 2, 3.5, so over, match it. And now I'm going to approximate where the cervical third is here. I'm going to place a mark on this side of the line, and a mark on this side of the line as well. So I have my two CEJ measurements here and here, and my labial-lingual diameter measurements in the cervical third here and here. Now, I'm not going to worry about drawing in the curve of the CEJ at this point in time because we're just blocking things out on the perimeter. But what I can do at this point is I can now take and create my root, draw a line up here and over and down. And then I'm going to come out on the facial incisal edge. And on the lingual, I'm going to do the same thing coming out that great diameter, but remember that we have the cingulum that we have to count for. So with this cingulum, I've got to dip in a little bit before I come to the incisal edge. So I have my cingulum here, dip in on the concavity before I come to the incisal edge. You can kind of darken this, making the lines a little bit deeper here. Okay, so we've got our mesial drawing on here. This was our labial. We turn it, and this is our mesial. So for stage 2, what we need to do is we need to remove the labial block of wax and the lingual block of wax. Now, sometimes students will get a little freaked out at this point because when you remove this labial block of wax, you're going to remove everything that you drew onto the front here. Don't worry about that, because we will redraw this back in, and actually we won't be drawing it, we'll actually be carving it in. So, what I want you to do, be brave, and you're going to carve this labial all the way down until you're touching the facial surface and also the root surface here. So you're going to do the same thing that you did before, just some simple little strokes back and forth. Rotate it. And keep rotating. So you rotate your claw or your tooth about every 10 strokes here.